to California State University at Monterey Bay's World Theater. Please turn off all electronic devices at this time. Emergency exits are located at the right and left of the theater. In case of emergency, please follow instructions from our staff. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending our entrepreneurship workshop this afternoon, crowdfunding and more. We have four very interesting and very knowledgeable speakers to talk to you. While they are speaking, we encourage you to write questions that you think of on the index cards that you should have been given on your way in. And then after they're finished, we'll have a Q&A session for the four speakers. And Alexis will collect the cards, bring them up here, and we will go through them one by one. So again, thank you for coming. And we're going to start right away by, first of all, thanking our sponsors. The first sponsor is, of course, the College of Business, formerly known as the School of Business. The IIED Institute for Innovation and Economic Development, led by Dr. Eric Tao. And the two SBDCs, the Small Business Development Centers, one in Aptos and one here on the CSUMB campus. So please, before we start, let's recognize our sponsors. Our first speaker this afternoon is Dr. Brad Barbeau. Brad is an assistant professor of economics and entrepreneurship here at CSUMB in our College of Business. He teaches courses in economics and entrepreneurship and is the coordinator of the school's agribusiness concentration and its entrepreneurship concentration. His forte is the development of innovative financial and strategic business strategies and models and building organizations to effectively execute those models. Brad holds an MBA in economics and a PhD in business administration from the University of Michigan's Ross School of Business. He's on the board of the Cal Coastal Rural Development Corporation, a lender to agriculture and small businesses, and he's a founding member of the Central Coast Innovators Roundtable here in Monterey County. He's also a member of the Monterey Rotary Club, and he lives with his wife and two children in Salinas, California. Please recognize and welcome Brad to the stage.
Thank you very much. Up here. All right, so welcome to Crowdfunding and More. My job is to give us a little background here and do a primer, if you will, on crowdfunding so we all know what we're talking about. In this emerging, it's been around for a few years, but it has been growing very rapidly and is still pretty new and changing pretty rapidly out there. So we'll talk a little bit about the basics here. Let's start with simply what is crowdfunding? What do we mean by crowdfunding? Straightforwardly, it's raising money over the internet, although versions of crowdfunding have been around for thousands of years, where somebody goes to their friends and says, I want to start this business, I want to do this project, will you please give me money to do that? The idea with the internet here is we're raising small amounts of money from a large number of people to put together a reasonably large amount of money to be able to fund projects of different types. There are several different flavors of crowdfunding out there, and the one that everybody thinks crowdfunding is the one that it isn't, actually. The big ones are, first of all, the donation model. You go out, you place your ad, whatever, on the internet or on the internet site, and you say, I'm doing this wonderful project. I think the world needs this project. Please give me money so I can do this project. People fund films. We'll hear about some of those later. They fund books. They fund art projects. They fund social projects, and they even fund starting businesses through that. That donation model is you're literally asking people to give you money. and not promising that you're going to give them anything other than that you're going to do your project. That's really what you're responsible for under the donation model. Now, a slight variation on that is one where you say, if you give me money to get my project started, then I'll give you something in return. I'll give you a sample of my product when it's ready. I will give you a discount on my product for some period of time once I get my store open or my business going. I will give you a sample, whatever it may be. So that's the money for rewards model, and that's also out there. The third one is the loan model. I want to get a loan rather than going to a bank who may or may not be willing to fund me. I go to the internet, borrow money on the internet, pay the interest rate that I pay on the internet, and then I of course have to pay that loan back. And so those are the three main ones that exist on the internet today. Now the one that everybody kind of thinks about when they think about crowdfunding is the equity model. And that would be, you give me money, I give you some ownership in my business. Right now you can't do that. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But that's the equity model. That's where the big promise is, maybe. And that'll be a big subject of what we talk about today. How big is this? Are people raising lots of money? People are raising huge amounts of money on the internet. President Obama and the Democrats really, if you will, perfected this process, starting with his 2008 campaign, and then he blew away his 2008 campaign in 2012. And of the over $1 billion he raised, $525 million of that came from raising this money on the internet. And how these numbers work is interesting. He had about 4.5 million donors to get that money. You can't do that without the internet. You can't do that talking to one person at a time. You've got to be able to talk to lots of people to do that. And the average donation was $65.89. And actually that number is high because that number includes the big donations that didn't come from the internet. That was their average donation over their entire campaign. So their average internet donation was considerably smaller than that. So that's a very different funding model than what had been the political funding model, which is you go to a few big donors and you get money a few $1 million at a time. Lending Club's been out there for a few years. They, as of Sunday, which is when I pulled this number off of their site, they had done $1.58 billion in loans. What's interesting about that is they just crossed the $1 billion level a short time ago. So their lending model on the internet is actually still accelerating. So that's huge. And Kickstarter has raised at least $250 million for projects on the internet. So this is big bucks that are getting raised out there. How is this happening? Well, the internet's a wonderful thing. Lots of businesses have taken advantage of what the internet does. It allows us to extend our geographic boundaries, become global instead of local. It allows us to find things, find products, find donors, find projects to donate to much more easily than we could without search. Every student knows this because you don't go to the library now to look up articles, you do it on the internet. Or you go to the library and you look it up on the internet, but you're using the internet to find that information that you used to have to walk through the stacks to find. And the internet lowers transaction costs. It makes it far cheaper to deal with large numbers of clients, if you will. So what this looks like graphically is in the world of traditional venture capital, we had a few very large investors. You went out, you talked to a small number of investors, hopefully, and you got funded that way. Crowdfunding's going for the opposite end of what's called the long tail, where we can reach a large number of investors, each investing a much smaller amount to get to the amounts that we want. So this is a very different funding model that way. What do you have to do to be successful? Well, for one thing, and this is something I think many people don't realize until they've done this, is it is your social network that is going to power your ability to raise money through Kickstarter or Indiegogo or wherever you may go. It's not their social network, it's yours. You've got to drive people you know to the site. So your Facebook friends and your LinkedIn contacts are the people that you need to be cultivating, and you're going to drive those people to the site to put in their $5 or $10 or $25 or whatever it may be. The social network is really important. Second is you've got to signal quality. You've got to be able to demonstrate that you've got a project that they should fund. So doing a professional pitch is important, and video is being touted as one of the real secrets of making it work. You want to put a video up there that really shows people what it is that you're doing and get them interested in you and your project. Oddly enough, although the internet is a global phenomenon, this is still a very geographic process. And most of the money that gets raised from a relatively local geographic area. So you want to think about appealing to your local geography. Get highlighted. If you can be one of those, if you go to the Kickstarter site, you'll see on their own page several projects that are highlighted. You want to be one of those because your probability of success goes from about the mid-30s to about the mid-80s if you can be one of the highlighted projects on there. Don't go for too much money. One big study that was done on Kickstarter, they actually threw out all of the projects that were trying to fund themselves at $1 million or more. There were only 7 of them, and none of them got funded. You want to go for smaller amounts of money. That seems to be much easier to fund. And this might be a little counterintuitive. You want to set a short time frame. If you set a long time frame, if you say, I'm going to give 6 months, it seems like that's giving yourself lots of time to get money, but in fact what it's doing is signaling to everybody that you are not real sure you're going to be able to get money. You want to set a shorter time frame in the month, 6 weeks range. Those seem to get funded much more easily. So what we get out of this are some advantages and disadvantages. You can reach a much wider audience of smaller investors, and you can break these geographic and other barriers. Another interesting one is that in the venture world, only around 3 or 4% of all the ventures that get venture capital funding are women-owned ventures. And via crowdfunding, the numbers seem to go much closer to the actual population split. So there are other barriers that get broken down with this. There are some limitations. There are many limitations. One of them is you're not going to have the same kind of ongoing relationship with your backers that can be really important to the success of a startup venture. You want your money people not just for money, you want them for expertise. And that gets a little lost when you have a less personal relationship with them, with many, many investors. It's appropriate more for smaller levels of funding, read seed capital, more than that you're going to do your first round of startup, or certainly not your second round of startup financing via crowdfunding. And it is really not suitable for equity funding, at least yet. Some of the possibilities here, diversifying for investors, it's an opportunity to diversify with relatively small amounts of money. If you're an angel investor, you need to be able to put tens of thousands of dollars into each project. You've got to have a big pot of money to be able to spread that around. And investing in startups is certainly a numbers game. And through this, you can do it with smaller amounts of money into a number of ventures and diversify. There's a democratization. What the internet has promised, and to some extent at least, a pretty large extent, has delivered over its life. It democratizes the world. It allows more people to get involved. And it may make, there's some good evidence out there saying that it makes funding available for more innovative projects. That projects that are getting passed up by venture capital funding are getting funded through crowdfunding and are getting started and being successful. So things that are a little bit too far out in the wings for traditional venture investors might work in crowdfunding. It has some challenges. A big one being you can't, if you're funding a company, you want to sell equity in your company, you cannot go out and advertise to the general public and say, buy stock in my company. Interestingly, you can go out and say, give me money. That you can do on the internet. That's what Kickstarter does. You're saying, give me money, no problem. SEC doesn't care. But if you are going to give people something for that, in particular, if you're going to give people equity or ownership, then the SEC cares. You can't do that publicly. You have to be talking to accredited investors. There's lots of opportunity for fraud here. Due diligence is much harder when you're using a crowdfunding situation. Although the evidence so far that I've seen says that there's not much fraud going on the internet, at least not on the big sites. This is also a little more passive investing. Most angel investors want to be involved in the companies that they're investing in. They want to help to make that company successful. This is a little bit more of the you place your bets, you take your chances kind of investing out there. So there's change coming down the road, and we want to really focus on that. And the next speaker is going to talk about the Jobs Act, which was not an act that created jobs. Interestingly, I sat next to Sam Farr about a year ago and asked him what he thought of the Jobs Act. And he said, I don't really think we need another act to create jobs. I said, no, not that kind of jobs. This is the Jumpstart Our Business Startups Act. And it changed the rules, and is making changes in the rules about how you can raise money as a startup with the goal of creating more opportunities for startup funding. And our next speaker is going to tell us about that. So I'm going to hand this back to Mr. Panetta to introduce our next speaker. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Brad. Our next speaker is Dr. Jim White. Jim is the founder and president of J.L. White International, a management consulting firm. He's the best-selling author of What's My Purpose? A Journey of Personal and Professional Growth, and the creator of What's My Purpose Life Mastery Course. He developed the Circle of Success, a customized year-long leadership and management transformation process, and Jim White's classic movie series, hosts Circle of Success Radio, Circle of Success TV show on KYMB, and the Red Carpet Tour. These innovative programs have attracted more than 100,000 participants, including Fortune 500 CEOs, management teams, entrepreneurs, government organizations, and various trade associations. Jim helps people increase their success in as little as 90 days. By 1991, Jim had achieved international recognition as the CEO of Blount World Trade Corporation, owner and managing director of ACEC Centrifugal Pumps in Belgium, and vice president and division manager of Ingersoll Rand Equipment Corporation. Through his career, he has bought, expanded, or sold 22 companies, operating in 43 different countries. His strategy was to acquire failing companies, revive and develop them into thriving, profitable enterprises, and has generated more than, get this, $1.8 billion in sales. Whether working with a multi-billion-dollar corporation or a single individual, his approach is always the same. Help people clearly identify how they lead, along with balancing how they live, professionally and personally, so that people can discover their life's purpose. This is how leaders launch their real success, and why living well shouldn't take a lifetime to discover. Please welcome Jim White.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You guys are live? Is mic on?
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, I'm the tough speaker, okay? Okay, Brad says control is an illusion. Who do we have in the audience? I'd like to see a show of hands. How many students we have? And I'm asking this question so I want to frame my comments so you can get the most from my short few minutes up here. So how many students do we have? Okay, great. How many outside? Do we have any business owners, entrepreneurs? Okay, great, good. That helps me a lot. I want to pick up on what Brad was talking about. And I too had Sam Farr on my show some months back when we were talking about the Jobs Act. And we're not picking on Sam, we all love Sam, but well, what is it? Well, the Jobs Act was signed by President Obama April the 5th, 2012. The Jobs Act had 6 bills associated with it. What you hear the most of is the crowdfunding. Okay? The crowdfunding has been the one that's got most of the play. Now, Brad laid out 4 or 5 different ways that you can use crowdfunding today. What I'm going to do is just run through the 4 HR bills. I'm going to tell you what they are not. And if anybody wants this presentation, it's 119 slides, so Brad said prepare for 5 minutes, so I came with 119 slides. So we're going to pare those down a little bit, and we will look at number 1. Now, what I want you to, for especially your students, and if you have any indication that you're going to move forward in your career of becoming a business owner, you need to really pay attention to this. If you are a business owner saying, I need to find money tomorrow, you better pay attention to this, because we're going to give you the roadmap to do that, and the right roadmap to do that. Now, the first bill, oh, we don't need that. I want you to take a moment and look at this. In the introduction, Lou said that I bought and sold 22 different companies. That is correct. 22 all around the world. And this particular statement has been one that every time I would come in and I'd introduce to our management team and have an employee meeting, this is what I started off with. The value of a business is tied directly to the size and predictability and what else? Sustainability and growth rate of the earnings. That is a big deal. If you did not know that, you need to embed that in your brain. That is a big deal. Now, how does the Jobs Act help us do that? Well, you need the resources in order to do it, and the resources that you need are just 4 of them. You need the money to do it, you need the time to do it, you need the people to do it, and you need the material to do it. That's all you need to run any business on the face of the globe. Jobs Act 2012, HR 3606. Now, 3606 was what's called the Reopening American Capital's Market to Emerging Growth Companies Act, and I did not write this out of our U.S. Congress. Okay, that's the first one. I'm going to spend about 30 seconds on that. That is called IPO on ramp. Most people in this audience are probably not ready for an IPO, but basically what this particular bill has introduced is to kind of free up companies that are going for an IPO. They only now need to have 3 years of financials versus 5 years of financials, and there's other relief there. That is the only thing that's legal to do today out of the Jobs Act. That's important. That's in play. We're beginning to see some of that kick in coming out of Silicon Valley for some of the IPOs that's coming forth today. Okay, so that's the sections IPO 101 to 108. If you're interested in that, there's a lot of good stuff in it, and you can dig into that very deeply. Okay, the next one, HR 2940, Rule 201, Reg D 506. This is the biggest thing that has occurred since 1933. 1933. Significance of 1933 was what? Does anybody know? That's when the SEC and all the rules started coming together, how you raise money. The majority of the private capital raised in the United States today is through Rule 506, Reg D. Now, the big change of this will allow you, once approved by the SEC, and it's not approved yet. Once approved, they're going to take the handcuffs off of you, and you will be able to advertise. You'll be able to go on television. You'll be able to take out banner ads, you'll be able to do all this stuff. That is a big deal. Currently, the only way that you can do 506 is to go to your friends, accredited investors, up to 35 accredited and non-accredited investor. But you cannot advertise. You've got to do it through investment bankers and through your friends and what have you. So this is a big deal. Now, the next one is the crowdfunding, back up here. Crowdfunding section 301. We have two great guests that's going to follow me, and they're going to talk to you about the component of the Crowdfunding Act. It's called the donation. These two gentlemen have done it. They have raised money, and they're going to tell you how they've done that. So, again, I'm going to keep my comments very brief because we only have 2 hours, and I can talk for 10. Let's get started, okay? So, crowdfunding section 301. Like I said, Brad teed it up. Great, but I want to make sure that you understand what is legal and what is not legal today. What is legal today is the donation model, the loan model, and the other 3 models that Brad showed you on this slide. What is not legal today is the equity side. Now, we talked to the general counsel this morning at the SEC in preparation to see if we had any magic breakthroughs through the SEC and FINRA prior to coming here this afternoon. Are you surprised to know that there's been no magic breakthroughs through the SEC or FINRA or Congress? Surprise, right? No changes. Now, here is how the bill is currently written. Equity crowdfunding. You can raise $1 million in a 12-month period of time. You can invest, from an investor standpoint, you can invest, if your income is $100,000 or less, the current rule said that you can invest up to $2,000. Okay? It's important. If your income is $100,000 or more, you can invest up to $10,000. If you are the company that is filing for the offering, and if you provide audited financial statements, you can raise $2 million in a 12-month period of time. Now, I am not as sold on the equity side of this crowdfunding as I am on the donation side. Why? With the rules that are coming forth in Rule 506, they're going to allow you, if you need bigger bucks, that's going to allow you to raise more dollars almost with the same due diligence, if that makes sense. It will allow you to do that. So be aware of that. Now, what's happening today and where the confusion is in the SEC and FINRA has to do with the broker-dealers. The current rule says if you're going to raise equity, you've got to raise it through a funding portal. This funding portal must be pretty close to a dealer-broker. Okay. Now, what's happening to dealer-broker network is saying, hold on, you're taking some of my fees away from them. Right? So, what we're trying to do now is get the FINRA side, which controls the dealer-broker, and then SEC is trying to match this language to say we need to move ahead with it. Now, this, according to the law, this should have been done by December of last year. And this is what? April? I don't think it's going to be done in 2014 from the equity side. All indication. We're that far away on language. So what you need to be careful of when you're out there on the internet is you've got people that are using language because Congress did not separate crowdfunding donation and crowdfunding equity. You see the issue? Most people don't understand the difference. So I see people all the time sending out solicitations saying, I can sell equity in my company. Brad said it. You cannot without going to Leavenworth. Okay? You cannot do that today. So you really need to be careful, and you need to make sure that when that occurs, you need to do some real serious due diligence to make sure which is the best way to go. So one of the things that I'd suggest you take a close look at if you're looking to raise bigger bucks is pay close attention to Reg 506, Rule D 506. That's going to be the big game changer, okay? Now, when are we going to see that? We may see that around July of this year. Maybe, okay? So the other two bills, and I'll just run over, part of the Jobs Act because it's 1 year later, excuse me, has to do with community banks. Currently, if you're a community bank, you can have only 1,000 shareholders. They've raised that 500 actually, and now they've raised that to 2,000. So that really is going to give community banks a little bit more leverage, if you will. So that's another part of the Jobs Act. Another part of the Jobs Act, and most people does not realize this until somebody knocks on your door and said, hey, you're in trouble, and it's this. If you have a company and you have 499 shareholders, and if your assets are $10 million or more, the SEC can force you to become public. Anybody ever heard of that? Okay, there's one there. It's very few that's aware of this particular route. So there's all these small things, and what we wanted to do today is to make sure that we shared with you good folks the things that you cannot do and you can do to make sure that we are well informed. We just completed an event in Boston, April 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and I had some of my folks there, and we partnered with Reuters. We had 1,800 people to show up at this event, and that was just a couple days ago. And we had a lot of angel investors, private equity, venture capital folks, and there's a lot of activity out there. And by Brad's numbers, you saw the amount of money that's been raised through the donation. So the donation side, if you're sitting there and you say you got a great idea, please do not wait. That great idea, you can put it in play today. That's how the Facebook started. That's how it all got started, and that's the biggest thing that you can take. You can leave here today with some of the tools that we're giving you, and some of the tools that I'd be happy to pass on to you if you want them, step by step, that you can really put in play. And like I said, the other two speakers are going to talk about that. So at that, I want to give enough time to Brooks and Michael. Lou, if you're okay. There's a lot that we could say. There's 119 slides here. So the takeaway, equity crowdfunding is not legal today. One to look out for is Rule 506, Reg D. It's a big deal. Stay on top of that if you're looking to raise some money. Do not be afraid of it. It is a great, because even when equity crowdfunding becomes legal, the due diligence process is going to be about as much if you do a Reg 506, Rule D, okay? And another one, a bill that's part of it is called Reg A 504. The extension on that, currently you're only allowed to do $5 million in Reg A, Rule 504. The new rule will allow you to do $50 million. So there are some significant changes that's in play, and I encourage you to stay on top of these acts and stay after your congressman, write letters. That's what we did when we started following this, and we helped write part of the crowdfunding act with Patrick McHenry, which is a Republican in North Carolina, in this act. Our team did, and we just got behind it, just kept pushing, kept pushing, kept pushing. That's what you can do. Do not think that you do not have a voice. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. So if you are a capstone student, or soon to be a capstone student, and you want an example of enthusiasm and expressiveness and energy, please remember what you just saw. Outstanding. Okay, our next speaker is Brooks McChesney. Brooks describes himself as a serial entrepreneur, and he makes very significant contributions to the local business community and local entrepreneurs. He is always a judge in the various competitions. He consults with them, often for free, and has a wonderful career through Businessland, Intel, and currently Vidient. I will let Jim tell you more about himself, but please welcome Brooks McChesney. Thank you, Lou. Brad had a very interesting slide that I was appreciating in there for those of you who want to start companies about the venture community on one side looking for large-scale investments versus crowdfunding as a way to start a company. What I find is with the early startup companies, most of the venture community will not talk to a startup company unless they've gotten real market validation and proof that their concept will work. So what I want to leave with you today is an idea of using crowdfunding to fund a project or a beta test of your system, so that if you have an idea, you've gotten some market feedback on it, and then you can take it to the venture community and say you have your proof points. So think of crowdfunding as an interim step to get to the larger funding that you're trying to achieve. So the project that I'm going to tell you about was done by C Studios, which is a local film documentary studio. It released a feature film this year called Otter 501, which is about the rescue, rehabilitation, and release into the wilds of the 501st otter that has been saved by the Monterey Aquarium. In addition to being rich in science and natural history, this film was unique in having been shot through the lens of the narrator's Facebook page in order to reach a young, savvy web audience. I hope some of you have seen it. I was asked to help do a Kickstarter campaign to raise awareness for the film, boost its web presence, and specifically to raise dollars to show the film to underserved communities, mostly schools and clubs, that lack the resources to come to Monterey Bay and who had never seen an otter or experienced a marine environment. This was our first Kickstarter effort, and we didn't know what was achievable, so as Brad said, we started modestly. In 45 days, we exceeded our goal by 35%. So what were the lessons learned? 1, understand the scope of the project and keep it simple. Remember, Kickstarter is only a tool. It cannot make up for the inability to define a project. If you cannot walk into a room full of strangers and give a compelling elevator pitch in under 2 minutes and get people excited, you won't be a success on Kickstarter. So set specific and measurable goals that help potential funders understand what they are being asked to contribute to. 2, develop a clear timeline and project budget. Successful Kickstarter campaigns typically complete in under 60 days. I'm sure most of you have read Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore, which is about common mistakes entrepreneurs make in thinking that because they get early traction, the road to success lies ahead. Don't be misled by the early contributors. Kickstarter says 80% of projects that get 20% funded will be successful. But if you get to 60%, the number jumps to 98%. You don't want to be in that dead zone between 20 and 60% funding when the project can lose momentum and popular appeal. You need to continuously work your network, as Brad said, to keep it top of mind. Again, Kickstarter claims projects with more than 35 backers tend to succeed, whereas those with lesser numbers may not. Email blasts, tweets, Facebook, and blogs are all essential tools to reaching as broad an audience as possible. You need to mount a full-blown marketing campaign, much as you would a new product launch. I also mentioned budget. Remember, it's a zero-sum game on Kickstarter. If you don't hit your target, you get nothing. Don't set the bar unreasonably high. Factor in all project costs, and remember the fees to Kickstarter and Amazon. If you are properly budgeted and make it transparent to funders, you should do well. 3, I mentioned treating this as a marketing campaign. In the C Studios case, we arranged for friendlies to make early contributions to show momentum. Progress reports and updates to your audience are also critical. And there's the issue of rewards. Our most popular pledge was $25. At that level, we gave otter tags, the tags biologists use to track released otters. They were of minimal cost. Higher pledges got signed movie posters, a tour of the studio, a kayak tour of Elkhorn Slough, where Otter 501 was released with the film's producer. And for $1,000, we got a complimentary weekend donated by a local spa and hotel. Finally, lastly, remember whether you reach your goal or not, Kickstarter offers an invaluable tool to get your idea heard and get real market feedback. Big companies spend large sums for focus groups and customer surveys. All this can come to you for free on Kickstarter if you're prepared to listen to your audience. Good luck and thank you. Thank you, Brooks. Our next guest speaker is Mike Lupo. Mike is a lucrative filmmaking lifestyle mentor. He's a local leading authority in helping talented individuals make successful livings as digital video artists. When Mike started out, he struggled to get enough clients to make his ends meet. Unfortunately, he figured out an effective and purpose-driven method for attracting many video projects. His first 2 years in business, he's produced over 12 short films, 2 documentaries, 2 short features, a sketch comedy show, a dozen commercials, a web series for Colcast TV, and he's now casting for a feature narrative film that will be produced and directed here on the Monterey Peninsula. The name of that film is called Jane. He has over 100 students move through his classroom, and he's produced 7 successful crowdfunding campaigns. Mike believes in creating jobs. He's provided work for members of his conservatory by allowing them to use his top-of-the-line equipment, including the very latest in camera technology made by Blackmagic Cinema. If you look up the up-and-coming local leaders in filmmaking, you'll find many of them made their first movie by studying with Mike. Mike, please come and talk to us here.
Thank you. Just want to get a sense of who's in the audience really quickly. How many of you are filmmakers? Some students, okay, great. And how many of you have projects that you might be doing a crowdsourcing campaign for? Cool. And now, how many of you are currently doing a crowdsourcing campaign? Nobody yet? Okay, good. So I would like to first acknowledge you for being interested in this topic, because the crowdfunding really is a way to monetize this digital revolution, to really bring things, just make things a lot easier for everybody. And there's a lot we can learn from it. So how many of you are thinking about doing a crowdsourcing campaign and would really like a really successful crowdsourcing campaign? Raise your hand. Okay, awesome, good. So would it be okay if I shared with you Mike's 5 secrets for a successful crowdsourcing campaign? Yes? Okay, take out your notes, because I'm going to give you some good stuff for the next 10 minutes. And while you do that, I'd like to tell you a little bit about who I am. So, right now, I'm making more money than I ever had my whole life. I have too much work, and so I get to choose the work that only is the most creatively fulfilling for me, which is shooting video and telling stories. Last Sunday on Easter, I shot a Ninjago short video with my nephews, and I shot it with a Blackmagic Cinema camera, which is it's a great camera. And you know, they say the best camera is the one you have on you, and I happen to have a really great camera. So that was just want to paint that picture. But my life hasn't always been this way. A few years ago, I was in Los Angeles, and I just came back from a successful tour as an actor in a really great play. But I was so broke, I couldn't afford the gas in my motorcycle. I was living in an apartment, overstaying my welcome in an extra room at a director friend's house. And my parents were so tired of me asking for money that they cut me off completely. So I was alone and jobless in the city of the bored, as my dad likes to call it, Los Angeles. So the turning point for me was I enrolled myself in a program, and I got really serious about what I wanted to do with my life. And I got really committed to building new skills and figuring out some new skills to make a living with. And now I'm directing a feature film this summer in my hometown with Hollywood actors and crew. And it's not just a film, it's a film with huge social meaning. And it's motivated by really deep healing for myself and my audience. And hopefully it'll make the world a better place. So I owe a lot of that success to the work I was able to create, and it paid for itself by asking my friends and family to help make my important stories. So I'm going to give you, without further ado, some tips on how to have a successful crowdsourcing campaign. All right. So, number one, crowdsourcing should not be taken lightly. If you choose to do this, what you're going to do is you're about to ask everybody you know for money. So, that's the problem. The solution is to really believe in what you're doing. To really believe that your project is worth making if you're taking donations. And if you're asking for investors, you have to believe that your project will make money. So my mentor tells me that when I ask and have meetings for investors, it's like I'm asking my parents for money, and that I believe I can pay them back one day. So you got to really believe in what you're doing. So what helps is if you come from the heart. We communicate through our hearts, so when you speak from the heart, you speak passionately, they'll respond, they'll trust you, and your project they'll believe the project like you will. All right, number two. A lot of people, they have a bad pitch video because it's poorly directed or shot or lit, or it has a wrong approach. Okay, I'm not talking about having great filmmaking skills, but I'm talking about taking the wrong angle, and I've done this, okay? So some people will think, okay, I'm going to talk about who I am and my experience and my team's experience, and if I lay it all out there like a report, people will give me money. They'll just see the credibility in it. That does not work. It didn't work for me my first time, and it won't work for you. But I'll tell you what does work, okay? You ready? Here's the secret. In your video, write this down. Get angry. You have to be passionate and you have to get angry. It's like Pele. This concept is about, anger is like a really creative energy. It's a lot of potential for affecting your environment. So when you go up in front and the cameras are rolling and you send that video out, it's you passionately creating in front of them, okay? So find out what gets you angry with the world and your solution to it. And that is your product or your film. Okay, also, you must be really clear with your vision. Know how much money you need, know when you need it, and know how you are going to use it. People love to hear how you are going to use the dollars you're asking them for. They feel connected in that way, right? So I could go with the, okay, yeah, so I talked about that, the problem solution. So, just to expand more about that, clearly I'll identify the problem in the world that your project is solving, and then talk about how it solves. And if you're doing a pitch video, which I hope you are, think in stories. Here's an example. If you've come up with a prototype of a new cell phone keyboard entry thing, which I saw in a great Indiegogo campaign the other day about this, you have to think about how that works with people and set that up. Just think like a story maker and tell people how that works. So speaking images here. Okay, so this is the concept, is that you're not talking about a report of how cool your team is. You're going to talk about how great your project is and the solution it has for the world. You can help people see the problem and provide them with the solution. That's number two. Okay. Okay. So, all right. So, 2 and 3 are pretty close together, but it's more about the financial details. When you need to tell people about really how these details fit together, you are bringing down your project from the ethers, from a dream, into reality. So script it. So when you write it out, when you write your script for your pitch video, you're bringing it down into reality. I know it seems obvious, but do that. Script the whole thing out and be really clear on what you're asking for. So if you're making a film, you want to say, right now we are in development so that we can produce our film, and then this is how it's going to do. These are the phases of a film: production, and then maybe we're going to make it, and then we might come back to you again for post-production. Okay. Something like that. All right. Here's the next tip. All right. This one's really good. So, a big problem that people make is that they don't think of the counter-arguments. You got to put yourself in the shoes of the receivers of your message. And think about the reasons why they wouldn't give the money to you, why they wouldn't donate. So what you do, the solution here, is to write a list of your assets and your liabilities with your project or film. So let me give you an example. Myself, for Jane, the feature film, to raise our seed money to get us to where we are now, all of our legal documents so that we can receive investments, because you can't do that with crowdfunding, we needed some seed money. Thousands of dollars for these lawyers' fees and other things. I have a really great director of photography, okay, so I'm going to highlight that. He's 75 years old, he's one of the first documentary camera operators, he's worked for this, and this, and he's been doing this for, 50 years. So his credentials is not as important as how to wrap the asset, him as an asset, to me as a liability. So I'm a young director, and this is my first feature film on this level, and so that's a liability for film investors. But if I tell them that this guy wants to do this project, maybe his first feature film, because he loved our script, also a liability, because it's from somebody who hasn't made a movie before, and he loved me, you see. He likes me, he thinks I'm great, and that's why he's doing it. And not just him, but I named my editor, who's also reputable, my line producer, who's done all of these wonderful movies, and so on and so forth. So you see the concept of how you can wrap your liabilities with your assets to say, all of this is working together, and like that, right? Okay. So, all right, and here's the last tip. People think that crowdfunding, when they get into it, when you first start, you're going to send one really awesome email with your pitch video. And you're going to hope for the best. And you're going to be looking at Indiegogo or Kickstarter for the returns. And right away, there's going to be some great returns. And then maybe the next day, there'll be a little bit more. And then 3 days later, it's going to go dead. It's going to go silent. Well, the solution to that is you have to keep on it. This is not something to be taken lightly. Back to tip number one. This is a full-time job. Okay? This takes hours and hours of work to do. And if you don't have time to do a full-time job, this is for people doing part-time. So I really want you to get a sense of what you're getting into if you choose to do this. And here's why. It takes an average of 7 hits for people to finally donate to you. 7 times you have to reach out on an average for them to finally hit that donate button. And here's an example. One of my closest, oldest, best friends, Chris Angeles, produced an album. She made this great music video, it's kind of like a pitch video, and she sent it. I watched it 2 weeks ago, and I've been really busy, and someone who does a lot of campaigns, who might have taught her a thing or two, did not donate yet, okay? And then I hadn't heard anything from her for a long time, and then just the other day she sent me a personal message, okay? Personal messages are awesome, but I'm still busy, okay? So that was only twice she came to me, and I still have not donated yet, and she's a close friend, okay? That's just because this is the nature of the beast you're working with. You have to be the squeaky wheel against the grease. You have to be out there and sending hot little messages, some great little emails to the people. Not every hit to your crowd has to be a video containing great content. Some of them can just be a little update, a little exciting thing, or saying, hey, we're releasing this new, like this has happened, you know? So it takes a lot. So here's we talked a little bit about how long your campaign should be. And if you are raising a small amount of money, let's say $2,000, you could get away with doing a 1-month campaign, or maybe 6 weeks. But if you're doing a little more than that, you're gonna have to give yourself more time. So here's the average that my mentor has passed on to me, and that I'm gonna share with you, is that roughly you need roughly about 90 days. They say you want to write that down, 90 days. And, okay. So he also talks about the amount of crowd that you need to raise a certain amount of money. So that's a big question. It's like, how many people in my network do I need to raise what kind of money? Well, I'm about to tell you. It's about, if you want to raise $4,000, you need about 1,000 people. And that's on the generous side. Okay, that's what I've experienced. And on average, I've experienced that too. It's about $65 per person. Some people give a lot more, and some people give a lot less, but that's the way it works. So, okay, so it all hinges on your crowd, your network. And if this is your first time going about something like this, you may not have a strong network, but this can help build your network. You can use your crowdfunding campaign to build your network. It's an excuse to get in front of people, like I am with you today, right? I have my campaign going. So do live events, do speaking gigs like this, host parties, and just be involved. And another great thing is, in the beginning, you're going to want people to donate right away. So before you launch, you kind of want some people, they call them friendlies earlier, to donate right away so that you have some momentum, so that you don't have like an empty campaign of $100 for like a week. You don't want that. You want some money in there, and that'll help generate it. So personal messages are really key to send personal notes to people. But if you are sending personal notes to people, to 1,000 people, you're gonna see how this becomes a full-time job. So what you need to do is kind of get people in the room and do face-to-face like that. So that kind of helps with, it's kind of like, it's the equivalent of having a face-to-face conversation. You're sending personal messages. So get people together at all the groups that you might go to, brainstorm with your team on how to get your pitch in front of people. Don't rely solely on the campaign. Because when it comes down to it, it's just a tool to receive money. Okay, it's just a tool to get your message out there for them to come. It's a platform, but really it's about hearts connecting with other hearts. Okay, so that's what I want to leave you with. And I do want to say that I'm an upcoming filmmaker, and I love to meet other up-and-coming filmmakers and network together. So if you're interested in networking with me, there's some sign-up forms for my mailing list, and you can pay attention to what I do for my campaigns. You can check that off. Or if you know somebody who would like to work with me, you can check that off, and you can kind of sign up for the type of contact you'd like to receive from me. And those are at the tables on the way out. And I thank you for the opportunity to let me speak to you. Thank you.
Okay, so now it's time for you to participate, and we're going to take questions from the audience. And I think, is Alexis here? Alexis has some questions she's going to bring down. This is not the end of when you have to stop writing. Please continue to develop questions. And we'll go through them and get to as many as we can. What I would encourage you to do, if your question is specific to one of the panelists, let us know that. That'll keep it focused. I have an idea, Alexis. Why don't I start on some of them? So, does it matter what type of project it is? Do you have an example of a pitch video? An example of a pitch video.
Yeah, sure. If you go to Indiegogo and you look up "No More Stupid Girls" in the movies, that's my screenwriter talking about stupid girls in movies and how she's passionate about changing that paradigm.
Okay. Brooks,
So,
were you going to give an example?
Indiegogo.
Yes, we did do a trailer for the movie. We posted it on more places than just Kickstarter. And you will find when you go into Kickstarter that there are categories already defined where you have to put your project into one of those categories in order to be accepted. So take a look at that before you decide to post something.
Any other questions? Would anyone like to just stand up and ask a question? Sir?
Crowdfunding in terms of the equity, talked about the donation, but what if there are hard assets underlying a particular crowdfunding opportunity, such as there's a couple of startups crowdfunded real estate investment startups, whereby participants are actually buying equity piece of real estate. How does all the SEC and other regulations apply to something where they're actually buying that actual?
Okay,
Not just equity in a common startup.
I think we'll go to Jim with this one.
Yeah. If I understand the question, you have a real estate venture and you're looking to raise equity for that venture through crowdfunding, is that the question?
Correct. In a simple sense, yeah.
Currently, no. Okay. Until the SEC finalizes the route on equity for its real estate, regardless of what the project is, you cannot currently do that. However, there are other options for you. And some of the options can do, I think Brad threw up some of the loan. There could be some loan and some debt side that you could look at. But one of the major things that you could do if you're looking to raise millions of dollars for that real estate venture, I would encourage you to look at the Reg D 506 concept. That's more accepted today. That would be Reg 506, Reg D. So I would look at that. Your question is absolutely right on point because that's where the confusion lies in the equity side, and that's where the SEC and Congress have done a very marginal job of separating the two. We've heard two experts that use the donation model versus the equity model, and that's causing a lot of confusion. So your question is good, but simple answer is no, you cannot do that through equity crowdfunding currently.
Go ahead, right here.
How can you explain the difference between a nonprofit, say you have an animal rescue and they're always looking for money and they're always struggling, versus this crowdfunding? Is it something they can use, or how is that different? Having a nonprofit that's looking for money versus somebody using
There is a parallel site to Kickstarter called CrowdTilt, and CrowdTilt, as I understand it, but you please do your own investigation, is the first one that can accept money that qualifies as a nonprofit contribution through to a 501c3. So that is a crowd-funded site for nonprofits.
And I might add, the campaigns that the public television does, KEUD, is that it?
Yeah. KQED, yeah.
That is a crowd-funded event. Give me $75 and I'll give you a DVD. That is crowdfunding. Now, they are a nonprofit. Okay, so that is a great venue for nonprofits to use. crowdfunding from the donation model.
We had a question here.
When you start an Indiegogo or a Kickstarter and you put how much money you need, like say 600 grand, how do you gauge that you need that much money to make a movie? Like, I mean, obviously you have to pay people and your workers, but how do you know that you're going to need that much as a realistic number?
Well, my best advice to you would be to write within your means. You have to produce a film that you can make, that you think your crowd can help you make, and that you could believe in. If you look in the mirror and you ask everyone you know for $600,000, and your heart sinks or your spine sort of crumbles, you got to go lower.
Why do you say that number? Because I know that's like what you're aiming for.
Right? That feels right to me.
Yeah.
But my first film, I only asked for $4,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that felt good.
I mean, the first question I think you have to ask is, can you prepare a meaningful budget that somebody's going to look at and say, this is realistic? So I'd suggest you prepare as complete and comprehensive a budget as you can come up with before you start asking for money.
Well, where do you even start with that? I mean, because everything I've made has always been off nothing and all this guerrilla film style, or like, how do you know, like, where do you start on gauging the money you're in?
I can offer a website that I think would help you. It's got some very good budgets and samples for a movie, and that's screenwriters.com. Screenwriters.com. Very inexpensive software to walk you through creating the budget, and Brooks is right on it. Unless you have a solid budget, you're going to be in trouble. Screenwriters.com.
Was there a question over here? I thought I saw a hand. Go ahead.
Yes.
I see yours. Go ahead.
Yes, how does the IRS weigh in on this?
How does the IRS weigh in on crowdfunding? Does the person have to pay taxes on the money they receive through crowdfunding?
Yes. It's the IRS.
Would you like some? Would you?
Yes.
Go ahead, Brad.
Okay, so if you go out and raise money through crowdfunding, that's income.
Right.
And if you bring it into your personal, you're gonna pay personal income taxes. If you bring it into your business, that's gonna, as far as the IRS is concerned, that's revenue. It's not like if you go out and raise equity money, then when people buy equity from you, that's not income for the business. That's investment in the business, and it's not revenue. But if you go out on Kickstarter or Indiegogo and you're getting a donation, that is revenue for the business, so absolutely you're gonna get taxed on it.
Back over here.
But then that would be, you use it for business expense, so there'd be some balance there. Now, in a good budget, you generally pay yourself. Do you also with crowdsourcing? I mean, not too much, but I mean, do you pay for your time or anything, or is it mostly for everything else? How does that work?
You want a fully loaded budget, and if you're going to be participating in the project on a managerial or oversight basis, put yourself in there.
I'm just going to add to that. What Brooks said, I see this occur on a daily basis. You do so much work, but you overlook yourself. So please build your time into these budgets.
Would you say that 3 or more times to my students? Because I can't get them convinced on that. They want to give away their time.
Pay yourself. Do not give your time away.
Go ahead, back
Good
here.
question. Is there third-party escrow organizations that manage crowdfunding? I feel more comfortable, maybe people feel more comfortable giving their money to this third-party organization that the fundee has submitted their budget and business plan to, at which point they then fund the fundee, like a construction loan,
Okay.
right?
So an intermediary to make sure that it's spent properly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think you asked 2 questions. The first question is, Kickstarter is an all-or-nothing opportunity, as I mentioned. So the money gets, if you're a funder, you put it on your credit card and it goes through Amazon Payment Services, and they don't debit your credit card until you've reached the goal. So that's one way that you need to use your thermometer progress chart to tell investors where you are, because if you don't hit your goal, you won't get anything. So the investor in that case is not liable. Now, third-party escrow services, that I'm not in a position to give you an opinion on.
I can comment on that briefly. That is part of the discussion between SEC and FINRA, as I was talking about earlier, because that's the rules that's been established strictly for escrow services. And right now, that is still outstanding. Now, the SEC is pushing for that. FINRA, on the other side, is not pushing for that because they want to find a way to get fee income based on the transaction, not necessarily have the responsibility for an escrow service. So that is one of the, your questions are real good, and that's one of the things that it's got to be worked out.
The gentleman, you had a second question?
Intellectual property, you're putting your great idea out there to the world.
Good question.
How does one protect that? Or just stay out of crowdfunding if you're that concerned? Is that the answer?
Yeah, I have a good attorney. You're at risk, and you can copyright, you can trademark, you can do all the things, but that is a real concern. So you just got to make sure that if your idea, you got to protect it, and maybe some of your film ideas, how do you go about protecting some of your intellectual property?
Well, the Copyright Office for starters, but you know, we were wondering that the same thing. You know, how far should our script go to people? Should we, you know, should we be loose about it or not? Do we have to worry? And generally, we were just advised to just be careful, but not to hold back. That our script is what we're using to raise money, and people got to read it. And you know, we're pretty far ahead in the process here, so we weren't concerned.
Yeah, I might point out, if you go to raise money from a venture capitalist, for example, they won't sign a non-disclosure agreement. A lot of professional investors will not, just because they see too many opportunities. So you would never go to a venture capitalist and give them your source code. You describe the opportunity in a way that was compelling, but you draw a line between what you're willing to disclose until they're willing to write the check.
Can I ask you a question here? Do you guys know the difference between Indiegogo and Kickstarter?
No.
Okay.
Tell us.
So Indiegogo will give you your money whether you make your goal or not. Kickstarter only if you make your goal. But Indiegogo takes a higher percentage if you don't reach your goal. So they take 9%. And if you reach your goal, they take 6%. And I think Kickstarter takes 4 or 6? 4% when you reach your goal, and nothing before.
Okay. This gentleman right here.
Yes, I wondered, most of the talk has been around the donation or, you know, like the KQED example where you get something for what you give. What about loans? Anyone have any examples or experience around the idea of loans, and is that through Kickstarter or others, or where's this, that aspect of it?
The one loan site that I'm familiar with is lendingclub.com. But I've been on there as a lender, because you get a really nice interest rate. Don't put your money in the bank. There is some risk associated with it as an investor, but you manage that by spreading your $25 per across, you know, however many loans. But the interesting thing about that is the interest rates are not low by any means. The interest rates run from 6% at the bottom end, and that's if you have perfect credit and you're not wanting the money for more than 36 months and you've got a pretty straightforward purpose for the loan, to 25%, you know, which is credit card rates, so fairly high interest rates. And people, the kinds of loans that are on there are, there's a lot of refinancing credit card loans that gets done on there. People want to go on a vacation, they get a loan on there. People want to buy a boat, they get a loan on there. And there are a fair number of business loans also that are done. Now, like most small business loans, to get a loan for your business, is going to be a matter of you having the personal credit to be able to handle that loan. And Lending Club, the great thing about Lending Club, what has made them so successful is they do a very good job of checking on the people who are lending. You can't, not just anybody can go on there. The lowest credit score they will allow is like 660, something like that. So they do a lot of due diligence on people taking out loans. But that is, and there are probably other lending sites out there, but that's the one I'm most familiar with.
So I have a question. The two examples from the two guests are primarily focused on movies or works of art. Can any of you talk about something other than that? A technology startup, a handy gadget startup, anything other than works of art?
There's been, if you go on Kickstarter, you can see them. There are several, as I say, they're grouped by categories. There was a very famous one that got started very early that flopped because they couldn't produce the product that they wanted. But there are product companies, there are product offerings, so I would encourage you to go to the site and look at the categories.
Okay.
And there's a couple more, Lou, in that regard. Apparel, that's been very successful.
Oh, yes.
Design,
Designers, yeah.
get people involved in design as well as raising the money. So that's another, is a very hot market right now.
Okay, we have a question up here, I think.
Yeah, on releasing the funds to you, once you've met your goal, either Kickstarter or Indiegogo, let's say you set a 3-month or 90 days or 2-month, and you make your goal, do they hold it for a particular period of time? And as